Hey everyone! Today we're going to take a look at how to organize our information into a table. So I've put some information up here from a hypothetical fictitious experiment. Some people actually did this earlier in the year. They wanted to see how different exercises or physical types of activities affected the heart rate. So something that some tend to struggle with when they're making graphs is that they don't have their information organized properly. So making a table is a pretty important skill. It's one of the first things that you have to do before you even go through and try and create your graph. So I've seen it done different ways. I've seen everyone, organize their information and then, figure out how many rows, columns, etc. They need. But I've also seen people add them row by row. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at how many rows I'm going to need, and I'm going to look at how many columns. So if you look at the information I have, I need a row for my title. All right. I need a row for my variables. A lot of people tend to leave that out. So it's important that you identify the variables. Then I have three trials and the average. So I need at least four columns there, but I also need a column for my type of activity, which is my independent variable. So that's going to make five columns. All right. So I have five columns, and I have one, two, three, four, five, six rows. Okay. So first thing we're going to do, I'm in a Google Doc here. I'm going to go to insert. Sorry, I can go table. All right. That's one way to do it. All right. Or let me click out of here. Or I can just go table. All right. Insert table. And again, I said five columns, and let's go with six rows. Okay. So I'm going to double check here. All right. I had one, two, three, four, five, six rows. Okay. So my first row, right up here, my first row is going to be my title. Now I'm not going to. You see, I got a bunch of different cells here. All right. So I have to merge those cells. So I'm going to highlight, and then we're going to go into table. And if you scroll about three-quarters of the way down, all right, to the bottom third here, you're going to click on merge cells, and now it's given me one cell entirely to put my title. All right. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in the essence of time into my title here. Okay. Then I had my variables. So this is another area where people struggle. Your independent variable, all right, which is the type of activity, the type of activity, that always goes in the first column, all right? And your responding or dependent variables will always go to the right. Okay, but the first column is always designated for your independent variable. In this particular experiment, it's the type of activity. Okay, so now I need to plug in my dependent variable. All right, which is heart rate, and you'll notice it says measured in beats per minute. All right, that's my unit of measurement there, so I have to include that. But before I do that, just like I did with my title, I need to merge just these four cells, okay? Because my independent variable has its own column. So again, I go to table, about the bottom third, I find merge cells, and now I can plug in my heart rate, okay? Or my dependent variable. So let's plug in the activities that we had. All right. So we had running. Paste that in there. I had weightlifting. So let's copy and paste that. Walking. I'm going to copy and paste that guy. and then yoga. All right. So you'll also notice down here in my data that was taken from a scientific notebook that it says it gives you a note, right, that the control heart rate was measured at 68, 72, and 70, which gives me an average of 70 beats per minute. In your data, you could make a note like I did here, or you could include a column for the control heart rate. So either way, for now, I'm going to leave that. Leave that off. Okay, but you'll see that I need to add my trials. Now I'm not going to add. If I put trial here, all right, that would look a little, a little silly. All right, as a heading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back up. Sometimes this happens, guys. You may realize this. All right, and it's a very simple fix. I'm going to come into the cell. I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to insert a row below. All right. So then these cells are merged. So I'm going to highlight, I'm going to come to table, and I'm going to unmerge the cells. All right. So now I can put trial number 1. All right. Trial number 2. Sorry, so let me type these in. Trial number 3, and then I'm going to put my average. Now remember, we've talked about this, but we always do 3 trials to account for any kind of error or mistake, anything that may have happened. All right, and then here, if I wanted to, I'm going to come back up into table, and I'm going to merge these so it looks a little better than just having an empty cell there. All right, so organization is pretty important. You want this table to look organized. You want it to look neat, and you want it to look accurate. So now we're going to plug in some information. All right. So running, my first heart rate was 162 beats per minute. Then I had 168. I had 174, and my calculations have given that an average of 168. Okay. Now, again, I don't have to add beats per minute here. Right? In my table, I could do BPM, but I also have identified that up top. Okay, so let's put the weightlifting numbers in. All right, so when we did weightlifting, we had 140 beats per minute. We had 158. Third trial, I had 151. And again, you can see I'm just taking my data from down here. And that gave me an average of 149. So remember, some people have said, well, Mr. Ray, how do I figure out the average? Average is you take the number of trials. All right, you add all that information up. All right, and then you divide by the actual number of trials, number of events that you actually did. So if I was doing walking, I would add 100, 115, and then I would add 108. Okay, I'd add those up, and then I divide that number by 3, and that gives me an average of 111 beats per minute. Okay. And yoga was the last one, so let me plug these numbers in right here. I had 102, 94, and 98, and that gave me an average of 98. Okay. Now, this table looks good, but it's not perfect. So then we got to come up and do some organizational things. All right. So I want my title in the center. So I'm just going to highlight. I'm going to come up to the center button right here. And I might even give it a little fill color. So, excuse me. Here's my background color. All right. I'm going to go with just a real light gray. Right? It doesn't have to be anything over the top. But again, you want to kind of separate some of your headings and your titles and stuff like that. So I'm going to center this as well. Okay, I want that in the middle. I'm also going to put this guy in the center as well. Okay, I might even let me give this guy a little background here. Okay, I'm just going to go with a little bit of a lighter gray here. All right. So now I'm actually going to bold all my titles so they kind of stand out a little bit. All right, let me do the same thing over here. Okay. And there you go. Now you have a organized, easy to interpret data table.